So the work here has been part of what Heather has termed a slow exhibition. And it's an exhibition that holds space. It's about close inspection and reflection upon grief, loss, taking the time to heal as well, and the ongoingness of a healing process. It's been quite beautiful to actually see you behind the scenes as a friend, working away, and then seeing the work in the culmination of stitch, ceramics, photography and text and sound, such a language drawn out of a personal story and narrative. So I would like to kind of draw upon the title Connection, Disconnection, and the themes of beauty from brokenness, and how this has evolved for you, really, in this response, particularly to your dad's death, one stroke, and your own health. How's this come to be?
Yeah. So I think the last big solo exhibition that I did was 2018. Stephen, you might be able to correct us, because it was I'd done one with the Science Festival on the notion of balance or resilience, and I'd done one looking at the notion of balance. And I'm always interested in shared human experience, things that we all feel, maybe from slightly different elements of our story, but that actually make us human. And I am particularly interested in imperfection and actually celebrating imperfection, because I think we all feel like everyone else is getting it right and we're not. And the reality is none of us are getting it right, but we're doing a flipping good job. So I love that paradox of between the broken and the difficult and the imperfect, and that of potential. Oh, there's some people coming in. Come on in. Hello, Jamie. Hi, Cameron. We've only just started, so don't worry. So come grab me a seat. So really, I was just talking about where my passion for connection.
How your work come to be in
experience. Yeah. So I was just saying about my love of sharing human experiences, things that are difficult and full of flaws and errors, but with beauty and potential and hope, and this kind of incredible, resilient spirit that makes us still fight and choose to live and choose to continue and chooses to kind of stay in the space.
Your passion for bringing out those narratives, it's visual poetry, really. You see kind of a real human side, a real quality that's hard to put your finger on. It's something we all feel in our everyday lives. We see it in our families and friends. That softness and those connections that are so fleeting as well. So it's really beautiful to catch that in your work as well. So is this, what are you hoping to bring to the surface for people who are encountering your work? What emotions or feelings, or what do you want them to take away?
I guess I guess maybe it's a little important to tell a little bit of my story of where this particular part of narrative comes in. And one of them, so where I come from is the last 2 years. So 2 years ago, or from 19 years ago, I had something described as flare-ups, and I don't know what they are, but basically my speech, my hands, my legs would stop. I would be extraordinarily tired, have to sleep a lot, and would have chronic pains, migraines, and so on. And it's taken me, I've recovered from each of the flare-ups until 2 years ago in April. I got a round of COVID, which just triggered my autoimmune, as it's done for many of us. And basically for 4 months I was slowly getting better again and having to pace myself, having to learn to go slowly, to recognise what I struggled with, to ask for help, which is quite tricky for a lot of us. And that was fine. I was going back to work, I was teaching at the time, and I was just starting back in August. But we also heard the news that my dad was slowly declining. So this is my dad, just to introduce her to you. So my dad had vascular dementia, had had several years of slow decline physically, had part of his foot amputated and so on. But we had been slowly letting my dad go, and we were told that it was at the crossroads where it was actually going to be a little bit faster, and it was towards the end. So I had gone back to school with just duties, trying to work around my hands not gripping properly or being able to write properly. And the day of the Queen's funeral, my dad slowly passed away. I was with him, and he just breathed. He was a man of faith, so he breathed into heaven. So the day before the funeral, my mum got COVID, my brother got COVID, one of my brothers, and the week after that my mum had a stroke. Now, Dad was a slow letting go, so this exhibition is about loss and grief. So there's slow letting go, and then there's shock. My mum is a smiler, she radiates her smile through her heart. And
these portraits are just absolutely the pieces that you kind of really gravitate to, and like even when you see them on social media, you're just like, wow, I can't even believe they're stitched. They're just that fundamentally time consuming as well. So this idea of time and was producing these pieces, were they really cathartic for you in that sense, to make you slow down when you had so much going on?
Well, it was cathartic. This piece is called Not Even Your Smile, because the shock of Mum losing her smile and not having it for like a good lot of months and working hard on it. But also, I got COVID again, and my underlying condition came back with a vengeance, and there was neural tremors and things. So this time last year I was in bed pretty much all the time, and I would be woken in the night with tremors that happened every 30 seconds for 4 to 5 hours, which is like Chinese water torture. So the kind of longevity of when you're coming back to these pieces, I wasn't able to grip, to stitch. This time, it would be like in February last year, I tried to cut some food to try and make something. That was my big task for the day, and I cut my fingers. I couldn't lift hot water, I couldn't lift a glass of water because I couldn't grip, and the tremors were so bad. And I just
been a real journey in the last year really to get to this.
But the main 3 elements of loss, because this is about not just loss of loved ones or potential loss of a loved one, but actually loss of myself, my identity, because in not being able to use my hands, I find it also difficult to communicate. And I'm a talker, and and I couldn't articulate things, I couldn't keep a train of thought correctly, and I also got to the stage where some of my favourite people, when they rang, I didn't want to answer the phone.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really love is that you use that soluble dissolving fabric to create these pieces, that you stitched into this dissolvable stuff, and there was element that had to kind of be let go in a sense, as part of that process.
Yeah.
So was there things that you've had to let go in terms of what you could do previously as an artist to what you could do now?
Well, there's a huge, and I'm sure many of us have been through something in our life where we doubt our identity. So for me, not speaking to people, not being able to communicate with people, and not being able to use my hands was huge.
In a world where everything is so fast-paced, go, production, make.
And when you can't do it.
It's just so what we need right now in order to kind of find our articulation of what's going on in the world. And so this idea of a slow exhibition, really, can you tell a wee bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I think as an artist, I love finding materials that have a language that they actually do part of what this story that you're trying to tell is. But also, I think one of the last things that we did was Stephen and I danced. Now, you describe yourself as pantomime Dane. I describe myself as...
Only in the context of dance.
And I describe myself as a kind of disco floor, kind of shameless dancer, do whatever. But we were working on this idea of the notion of balance, and actually connection, disconnection came into that story as we were dancing, but actually trying to find balance. And it was quite a vulnerable thing because we were being choreographed by the beautiful Suzanne McCreate, who's a choreographer and real dancer. And but there was an integrity and an honesty in our lack of balance and actually our reliance on and our connecting with each other. That was about connection, disconnection. And I think from then, Stephen and I had talked about actually looking at loss and grief just from our own personal stories. Obviously, I've just told everybody about, your granddad passing away, and I having my uncle as well. Yeah, it's all the best people coming. So, having a difficulty, both loss of ability and loss of loved ones, and with loss, it doesn't heal overnight. And it doesn't change, and you have to learn to stay in the moment, because we can't choose ways of escaping.
It's often quite transformative. They're never really the same.
No. And I think, it's one of the pieces has a handprint on it, this central piece is called Pastoral. And it was really the transformation, and there's the red thread thing that will come through. Gail will probably ask me about in a minute, but this image here is my dad's and my hands, and what I've always loved is that I'm the only girl of 4 boys and me, and my hands have the same proportions and kind of as my dad's. My son Oscar has the same, so when we hold our hands, so I was very fortunate. I went through photos and Dad had passed away and found this photo where I was like, Dad, show me your hands. So his is a bit curved, but if it were both our hands straight, mine would look like kind of replicas. It's called image transfer, this one. And there was something about the transformation of having known my mum, my uncle, my brothers, my friends, the people who are my really important connections, that actually has got me through my loss of my identity, because I thought that not being able to speak, make, or communicate, or remember what I was saying half the time. That's why Gail's trying to keep me right. Actually, I thought, who am I? When is this going to get better? Because it may never get better. I may have loss and limitations for the rest of my life. What happens if the core bits that I value in myself, being a people person, don't come back?
And it's really interesting, your piece, the sound piece, which we're going to play now, is called Unravelling. So we'll listen to the sound piece called Unravelling.
He sees her. His whole world walks in the room, and the dimness ebbs in her presence. Knowledge flickers in his eyes. Her voice, his beacon of winter, his steady purpose, his home. His siren that calls to keep him with the living world. This disappearing man, he still sees her. The warm charm of youthful smile, blue pools that dance and sway him to remember, dotting the perforated moments that linger in fragile memory. She is his love. She is the red thread memory that is rooted deepest. Ragged breath ushers death, fragmenting as your soul sheds off skin. The strongest parts are last to leave. The strongest loves are last to part. As you lose yourself. As you lose yourself. It is a slow closing, a profound letting go. Dry ice turns to mist as connection sublimates. I am yours. You are mine. Memory, spirit, soul. My heart still tied to your heart. Home calls and a shrinking world no longer tethered, become a constellation of infinite stars. He is with love.
Like, those words for me, they just give me shivers up my spine. You just kind of feel them, and I just always feel that in response to your work, you have bodily imprint into everything, the handprint on the vase, the softness and the vulnerability that you expose through your processes. Do you often consider that when you're producing your work, the how it's almost performative and tactile, the bodily response?
Yeah, I guess right from art college, I have been described as a mixed media person because I don't stay with one material. But I think it's the concept of what I'm interested in at the beginning. And for those of you who are just in, I said that I'm really passionate about shared human experience that's imperfect and broken but beautiful and full of hope and potential. And for me, there's something about a sculpture, a solid piece of work, my body, that will either be put into vulnerable places, vulnerable techniques that I don't always know. Somebody said to me, why don't you do something that you already know? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
There's always something really good about it.
Yeah.
Draws
Being
you
on
to
the-
doing
being
something
on the
that's
edge.
slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's always...
Being on the edge. But the guy Mahon, he made my lovely contemporary locket shapes that I wanted for Mum and Dad's story. His wife's a ceramicist, and I was telling her that I had just dissolved, because this is stitched on, stitched over and over again on a very fine cellulose fabric that actually within 5 seconds I didn't realise, because these pieces I've never made in my life before. Didn't know if I was going to be able to make them because my hands were limited. It took me from August. I hired a studio and was able to go for half an hour a week. I used to tell Mum I'm away to stitch your face. And when I was doing Dad's, I used to go in and just go, hello Dad, and just touch his wee face. So it was quite a cathartic thing for me. But yeah, his eyebrows, did you say? Yes. But when I knew that the fabric would dissolve out, I knew that I had to stitch over and over and over and over and build layers.
I bet that was a little bit scary though.
The stitching was fine as long as I didn't tremor, so I literally could only do a short amount of time, but the dissolving was a shock. So, ironically, because I think a lot of, you're talking about bodily things, so it's not just making the objects themselves that have an otherness and a love.
The body is a container that has these stories to express it, or not always kind of really over, too cognitively aware. It's these kind of very soft, unseen and seen vulnerabilities that we respond to.
Yeah, I often talk about otherness, which is really my way of describing the body, or the soul, the spirit, the parts of you that, for example, love and loss, you can't see it. You can see the effects of it on your face, you can hear how your voice crumbles or is delighted, but you only get a sense of it. So everything, even from the writing, trying to recreate my dad's writing when my hands couldn't write.
Yeah, there's an ephemeral quality to that with the light and the double layer. Yeah.
So I'm always playing with light and with objects, materials, body things, solid things, that have another quality. So when it came to this, even in the making, I just find myself, so I was saying about Mark's wife, just Rose, and I said to her, I put in Mum's, this was a very structured pattern that was on one of your tops. Mum was leaning forward, she doesn't like the fact she's no neck, so she was leaning forward in this picture, our faces was lit up, she was telling Dad, or reading to Dad, and telling him wee bits of information, and he had his eyes just pinpointed, really trying to take in her voice, which he loved right to the lay down, and her face as well. It was its little pinpoints of the connection, even though there was so much of them with a disappearing man and a shrinking world, we could still see that little red thread connection that was between them, between us. When I put Mum's fabric into the water, it came up like, I do have, I have like a video of it. And if you heard background noises of what I'm going, oh my goodness, oh. With Dad's, Alison, Mark's wife, had said to me, well, why don't, would you not be better, because she couldn't deal with imperfection and flaws, and I'm going, so she said, why don't you stitch it onto another piece of fabric and so it stays in the place that you want it? And I was like, that's a really good idea, but I don't think I can, because I need to be vulnerable. I need to know, to not have a sense of being able to hold on to what I'm going to lose, because
a sense of letting go again.
Well, lost, you don't know what's going to be left. You don't know what you're going to be able to have at the end. And Mum's glasses started to come away from her face. Now, the good thing is there's cellulose kind of stuff in it that, once it dries, it firms up. But actually, I was like, do I stitch them? What do I do? And it doesn't look as good as it used to whenever I did all those preparation photos. Mum's was a shock. Ironically, Mum's stroke was a complete shock. This is called not even her smile, because all I could say over that weekend was, I'm not ready to lose her. Week after my dad's funeral, not ready to lose her, not even her smile, not even her smile. And that's all I could say, that's all I could think. Dad was this slow letting go of a beautiful man who was flawed, a little bit, but amazing. Brother-in-law.
Perfection is not really, it's not interesting.
No,
It's our imperfections that actually create and tell the story.
And it's whenever he went, it was actually, I thought there was more head. And being, like, coming from, teaching art as well, you're like all into your proportions and you have it. But again, it was like really true. The fabric I chose to use, the way I chose to do it, created a vulnerability that was about letting go and actually going, he was a disappearing man, an incredible man, but a disappearing man. He shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and then, as the poem says, then finally untethered when we talk about body and spirit. There's a line, and for those of you who are scientists, sublimate is when solids turn directly to gas. So I said dry ice, mist, connection, sublimates, because actually it was just his body, and there was a sense that Dad was now free from the limitations. And with my hands, I've actually been exploring my limitations as well, that are within my new little box for my health.
It really brings to mind something I reflected in some of my work as well, is about Japanese Shinto with Ma.
And that's it again?
It's Japanese Shinto philosophy called Ma, where it's about where there is no such thing as empty space. Everything has substance to it. There's air, there's memories. It also plays into the idea of wabi-sabi, the beauty of our imperfections, exposing those imperfections, and in previous work you've used kintsugi as well, and gold. So red has been your choice this time.
Yeah, and there's a little flexible
a little bit over there.
in these pieces
Yeah.
here. Yeah, so this is called repurpose, and so the red thread is
This
another.
piece over here as well.
Yeah, and this as well. And actually, unfortunately, it's a slow-growing exhibition. These are my dad's old gloves, and I used to put these on my feet to entertain my friends whenever I got home and pretend to be a gorilla.
Well,
And
that's
well, but I started to put what the red thread connection was between me and my dad, and by default the rest of my family. Red thread is again something Stephen and I have talked about a lot. And my favourite definition of red thread comes from Japan. Again, they talk about from your heart. There's a red vein that goes down. It's one of your arteries. It goes down and it goes via your little finger. So therefore, I've stitched both my dad's and my fingers. Mm-hmm. But that red thread is invisible. So actually, I could probably say most of you who've been in here, I've had some sort of connection with at some point. And you have been significant people in supporting me, in challenging me, in laughing with me, in grieving with me. You are important people, and that invisible thread should connect with your little pinky. It's the reason why people do pinky promise, because it's a real kind of bond, it's a real connection, an honesty, a respect, and a valuing of another person. But I thought a lot about the red thread in terms of my healing. My healing comes from actually the things that I know that I lost, where I actually just thought, who am I? What am I going to do now? To August, when I went in, started stitching little bit. My friend who, Marika, who was here but had to go back to look after the dog, she's my housemate. She talked about, Heather, we said about touching something for like 10 minutes a day. And a lot of days that was me lying in bed thinking about it, just dreaming what I could make. So Gail asked me before, you sometimes have these in your brain a long time before, even Mum and Dad, and even Stephen and I 4 years ago, or 5.
I think any generation of work, it's seeded a lot, many years before it actually comes to life. It takes a lot of kind of just mulling and letting it settle, and then thinking about it and then letting it go a wee bit for a while, and then it kind of picks up momentum, something sparks it again.
Yeah, and actually for me, the process of not throwing something away, repurposing, my dad collected old jars and old nails.
Yes, what are the marks on the surfaces?
Old bolts and old screws, and he used to have them and made shells. So this is actually made out of an old floorboard that has paint on it. So everything's repurposed. They're kind of like artifacts because my dad saw value. He was a work kid, so he saw value in everything. Mum used to stock the fridge to feed 1,000 people. Dad still does. And Dad would have gone through everything that was out of date and ate it. But it was the value of actually not throwing something away. And to be honest, when we hit low points, unfortunately I wasn't there for very long because I had a great doctor, great friends, great family, great support. But you always want to throw yourself away, and in the DNA, the red thread vein that's been put into us as Dornans, there is resilience, there is resourcefulness, there is also I've got 2 things here, and it was like my dad's writing. Because my hands couldn't write, and because I didn't know what to do with my hands, I started to try and write big and wire. So I was trying to take my dad's writing. My dad had the most gorgeous writing. I'll send it round. He also wrote really tiny on little notes. Two things that he had passion for were God.
Wow, that's great writing.
And he taught and he taught electronic engineering, so he also was a problem solver and a practical person. And I love those two things that I learned about him.
Stunning.
That
Is it a
sense,
passage, right?
yeah. So the sense of gratitude and actually problem solving.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that sense of gratitude and grace, that actually even though situations don't change, that you can think differently about them and change your perspective, whether you have a belief or not a belief or a faith system. You can think outside the box in those things and problem solve. So I've learned actually through the DNA, the red thread, the hands that were invested, the bits that I see of myself every day. We don't all see our faces, but hands are that solidity, that expression of what is other in us as well. And that's why I use those quite a lot. But it was
When I
that
see a
sense of-
performative eye, when I see that you're understanding through the body of our relationship, power of contract. But that, that kind of touch and tactility that you get through hands-on making, but also your bodily awareness from having done my performance. You talked about balance as well, and that sense of having to work through periods of difficulty. And negotiating those things, so resilience, you mentioned that as one of your themes that always kind of keep coming as a recurring theme.
I think when it comes to the hands, it is, there's also that sense of repetition and breathing as well comes into my work quite a lot.
So how do you
And I
marry,
think
you mentioned science as well, so it's like this, how do you marry the scientific with this kind of real human poetic side of yourself?
Well, I think it's observation, and it's the same as human experience. I watch myself most, and the hands are that repetition. In terms of the context of this exhibition, the sense of actually recovering from loss is to choose to breathe, to choose to do in small portions, because it gives you context to it. So I think that the hands, the repetition, you're talking about balance, there's a repetitive practice of
But you see that even like corresponds to the ceramic work as well, and that touch and time, the manipulation,
it's I think
and the translucency of surface, because you can see in this front area you've got the cracked surface, and you can see in the hands the translucency in the cracked surface of time and love. You can see that in there too.
Yeah, I think I love things that are imperfect because they tell stories. They tell stories that are really beautiful of endurance and resilience. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it's more observation, really.
I
The language between the materiality, it's always infused, no matter, like, say, mixed media. The same materiality, the same way you treat your mediums is always part of your, the overall media resilience and temporality, really.
I guess I'm just really passionate about being human.
You're a good human. You're good at being human.
And I just like telling that story in lots of ways.
Do you want to tell us about why you selected this quote here?
It's
By Albert
Camus, French philosopher writer, who did L'étranger, the stranger, kind of nihilistic existentialist guy. But I was looking at just trying to explore other people's awareness of grief, and when I read this poem I thought of Mum and Dad's faces and that connection that was between them, even when it flickered, and also just about endurance and getting through things. So it says, when you've once seen the glow of happiness on the face of a beloved person, you know that a man can have no vocation but to awaken that light on the faces surrounding him. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. And in the poem that I wrote, one of the hardest, loss before final loss of dad, which isn't really final either. I think that's why there's this ethereal quality, because we don't lose the people who die, they live in us, and they live through us, and they are repeated in the passion that we have, the kind of ideas. But, let's see. Yeah, I was thinking about her, he sees her, because my dad still saw Mum, right to the end. He saw her, he was connected, but it said her voice, his beacon in winter, and one of the hardest things I think we went through in lockdown was that I'd just gone into a home, and it was as much to make sure, because the difficulty that, and the kind of love and compassion and commitment Mum had from kind of like her out as well, and we had to think that through really carefully, and we knew that all Dad needed was to see Mum's face. Mum used to struggle with it, just to let him go. But what was amazing is that he remembered her number. He didn't remember loads of things, but he remembered her number, her telephone number, and rang her in the middle of the night about 5 times ago. And he couldn't really hear very well, and whenever we were wearing masks and he couldn't really hear you, and he couldn't see your face. But when he was on the telephone, he had this gorgeous connection, and you would read to him and play with him and talk to him. So her voice, his beacon in winter, and for me, in the depth of winter, I finally found within me there lay an invincible summer. And I think, again, another part of what was in my red thread DNA with my family is ability to, and like as I said, endure, to keep going, to find the strength that you don't think you're going to have whenever you haven't gone through it yet. And looking around the room, everybody has found strength to be something in the depth of winter. And I think that's what I find exciting about creating, you asked about visual poetry earlier, is this is my way to create conversations. I describe myself as an artist, maker, conversationalist.
So do you feel that there's going to be another, this to me feels like it's just an arrival?
Oh, it's exhibitions to me now for a long time have been just a point where I share with more people, and I still continue the conversations. I will still be making this when the exhibition comes down, so watch online. I've also got a hope to write blog, but with my energy levels I've had to be gentle and actually go, it's a slow exhibition, it's a slow making, it's slow art in terms of how you view it. So it was very interesting to have just these pieces and a couple of photos and the poem fill in the room, because like I come from a making background, so you've got to make loads,
as a maker, we're like, you usually have stuff everywhere, fill of stuff, but it's like giving space to that emotional side of things.
And allowing your audience to absorb it, because like so many times we all gone into, Ulster Museum or even like a fancy, gallery that has like a Van Gogh or a Renoir or, Botticelli or something, and you're going, oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. And just start walking past everything. So it's been really interesting to pay respects to Mum and Dad with the poem, and just the impact that like for me, my observation, the feedback that I've been getting, and also the theme connecting with an integrity with the way with real people.
Yeah, and like when I was reading your exhibition information, it brought to me a quote that I keep coming back to as I work a lot with ceramics and that idea of kind of connection to earth as well. But for I'll quickly read this little quote by Tim Ingold in his book Making. Yes, as with pots, the same processes that keep it alive also rendered forever vulnerable to dissolution. That is why constant attention is necessary, and why bodies and other things are poor containers. Left to themselves, materials can run riot. Pots crumble, bodies disintegrate. It takes effort and vigilance to hold things together, but in pots are people. And so that was something that I felt really connected to those themes of disconnection and letting go.
Yeah. And I think in terms of like trying to hold things together, I think one of my biggest things is learning to actually relax into it. You know, when something vanishes, actually there's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in, I was trying to stitch the resilience bit, and it took me like a day to get where it got to, so this is how long it takes me to work. But my dad used to stitch our old satchels, because back in the day, whenever you had ones that lasted for more than a year, and he would use pliers mold them sometimes to kind of pull it through. Now he had really strong fingers, but I had to kind of like use the leather to push it. You know, you get these tiny bits done, and to kind of pliers to pull it through, just to do the. I got to where is it to Resili. But again, it was like the resilience that I learned through the memory of my dad, who's no longer here physically, but is actually sublimated to be with me in other ways through making and problem solving. Is really, do you know what? I know it's about loss and grief, but it's really delighted me. I have like
I feel there's like a release almost in yourself if I've got this.
Yeah, just to kind of know that I'm slow, and I might produce like this August to November to literally 2 days before the exhibition, and also 2 days before the exhibition, not knowing if he's going to just evaporate completely, if there's going to be anything left, but it feels good. It feels good to do what I'm made to do, and to share with people, and to go, we are human together, like we are not alone, we are.
And it's music, it's like a congratulations on kind of getting to this really poignant point in your work, really, you know. I think it's your skills always come to show, and your emotional side always come through. I'll open it out to you, to the audience now. Has anybody got any questions for him?
Yeah, I was interested in the idea of, because the whole thing of putting those in the water, and the terror of it potentially having nothing left, you know. And I'm just wondering that interesting thing where your process and you know, the whole point of choosing those materials and working in that way is that there's that risk, but also you've got an exhibition to put up, you know. So is there that must have been like, what would you have done if you had your mum there, and then that, say if that had just melted completely, and you were like 2 days later you had a wee thing to do, you know. That's the thing, and yet you still did it, you know, and because it would have been wrong not to, because it wouldn't have been true to the form and all the rest of it, you know, because that's that thing, isn't it, where you've got like, it's like deadlines for plays or for books or poems or whatever.
And it's going out to public.
Yeah.
It's like people will say, I remember doing the resilience talk about the science festival, and I had 3 ceramic pieces, and a bit that was knitted with gold thread or gold wire. And so I had 3 pieces for my show that looked, you know, I was kind of pleased with them and I could stand over them. But then I had 2 weeks in the art college working in front of students with resilient materials I'd never worked with before, that were rubber and bamboo, because they have resilient qualities. And I love choosing materials that are inherent. I think come on in if there's, you can come on, you're right there. But I love choosing materials that have a language, that actually it's about me just playing with it and discovering what it does. And I think it's an interesting question, Stephen. There is, those of you who know me, I was going like, what will I do? Like, I'm only going to have 2 pieces. Even like having 2 pieces, and came in and Robert, who had asked me and trusted me with a solo show, like, this piece could have been with a whole group of people who might have filled the space. And Robert went, have you anything else? And I was like, no, Robert, it's a slow exhibition. It's going to be like, but what was lovely is he believed in me and trusted me, and I think what somebody once said, you always turn it out, Heather. And I said, yes, you always turn it out.
Years of getting to the deadline.
No, but the thing is, I'll always turn it out until I do make that huge blunder. And I don't know, I think it's just more, it was like Alison asking me about, when we're going to melt out, dissolve dad, and as I said, it goes like 5 to 10 seconds, but I think it's just about the integrity of making. It's the integrity, and I think I have to do it. There's something in me that is a risk taker, and again, I guess that goes back to human experience. We're all taking risks with difficult things. We're taking risks, and sometimes, and I've often said it, is even though it was hard, I wouldn't change it. And even though I would never wish it on someone else, I've grown as a person. So each time I am growing as an artist in my language and in my imperfect pieces, that I actually do choose something that I don't have control over, while I also do use a lot of control and try and use a lot of skill. I do try to make them right. But
improvisation though is like having those skills from your background, but then allowing that little bit of risk at the edge, just to kind of play at the edge of that. Yeah, playing in the unknown.
As Mum said, it's the unpredictability of life, and I think it's got an honesty, and I think that my audience can see that, and it's really important to me that while I like to read highfalutin things when my brain works, I love to connect with the average person on the street who and I want to have like a language that communicates that, even though they say it, it's not patronising, and it's not a kind of quote that I've read so many amazing quotes, and it actually really means something to me, but if I said them out loud, I would be actually vomiting because they sound so trite, but they're real, the real honest life experience, unpredictable life experience quotes.
But actually sometimes you find that some of the best writers are those who can actually speak it very simply, like Tim and Gold is one of those writers. I find just their writing, they can talk all these kind of high concepts, but their language is still achievable, and I think that's what you do as an artist, is really that bridge to kind of bring all those the influence from all the artistic readings that you do into a very vulnerable space that people can feel. I think that's it hangs in the air in the space, I think.
It's just really important to me to have, as a maker, artist, maker, conversationist, I think it's conversations, and to make it easy for people to go. I just had the most beautiful experience the other day with, there was a group of people from an exhibition group that were sort of an older generation, and in terms of loss, in terms of their ability, in terms of all sorts of things, and this lady is early onset Alzheimer's, and if I'm honest, then I can actually share what I learned. For us, we talked about our little boxes, which have limitations and boundaries of energy, of brain power, of memory, of physical ability. And I know we were celebrating together because we were saying that we still have amazing things in our box. And I've always joked about like being an alchemist because I can't decide which material to work with. But alchemy is like creating gold from basic things. And actually, that conversation was pure gold. And you know, if I can create that through showing my work and showing my vulnerability and Stephen not knowing right up until the day and hour, I'm still hoping it never ever happens. But
You're going to do it
someday. Please be really kind to me. And you're going, oh, that's not dodgy.
We always have that as ours, but we're never very planned. But we're thrilled by the risk. There's an element of being drawn to the risk. That's where the goal is.
Ironically, last year I was asked to do the solo show on the strength of a piece that I did when my hands weren't working after the first bout of COVID, and I had to latex my foot and do all sorts of things, and then I ended up stitching, and that's where I came back to realising that I could stitch and draw with a sewing machine when I couldn't do it with my hands, and to be honest, like coming up to the end, I ran out of time and I physically didn't have anything in me to do it with. Where like I would have stayed up through the nights before, doing several jobs. and I do count it as my like A-level piece. You know, and having done like a degree and a master's, and you know, you don't really want to come out with something that you think in your head looks like something you do at A-level. A-level's brilliant when you're at school, but whenever you're supposed to be a practicing professional artist, it's not great. But that's what Robert asked. He saw something in it, and he asked. So even that vulnerability of going, you know, having a wee twitch in my eye, you know, he saw something in it that allowed me to do this show. So thank you, Airspace, thank you, Robert. But does that answer your question, Stephen? In a very tangential way, as is my form.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything?
Personally, I really enjoyed the idea of a slow exhibition and kind of things being added to the space. It's kind of, I don't think I've encountered that as an artist before. So my question is there to be a continuation of this work, or because I kind of feel like it's an entrance and an evolving thing.
Thank you, that gives me an excuse to continue being an artist for the rest of my life. Actually, a quote that I learned, there was an article that I read, I'm trying to remember the name of them. Can anybody help me? They make, it's a design company, and they make like toilet rolls that are done like cactuses, and you know those little salt and peppers that are magnetic and the little people. Begins with F. Anyway.
Another time.
I'm losing it as I get it. But they wrote an article called "Failure is Glorious," and they said that if they didn't sit on the edge of potentially failing or not getting something done, that they would also reach for the stars and reach for the kind of really exciting things. So with the slow exhibition, there is that sort of sense of not being able to fire stuff, because there's electric storms, and if the electric cuts out mid-firing, it could actually, the piece that I've made perfectly, then carved to crack into, and are hoping that will actually crack a wee bit more in the kiln, which it did at the bottom. You know, those things are under pressure. I do want this to go further. I have things that I haven't even put into this exhibition that I had hoped, but I had to be slow, I had to pace it, and I had to hold the space, and actually to pay respects to each piece, because each piece is really meaningful for me. I will be blogging, I will be writing about it, I will continue making. I am hoping that I will be able to take this somewhere else and add to it as it goes.
But I think that's a really strong format to continue with, that idea. Even in the exhibition to allow it to evolve, and it gives you the opportunity, but also the audience, to then keep coming back and seeing something new.
If anybody has any good places that I could go to, any nice contacts, you know, most of us are kind of artsy, or you know, just normal, but so I am thinking about what I want to do next with it, and I don't want to stop, because I'm not done with it. I don't know if I'll ever be done with it. I think it will be just lots of ways of articulating nuances of human beings. But yeah,
That's amazing.
that answer your question, Quentin? I diversified again. You can see there's a theme here. As I get tighter, I get more waffling stories. Anyone else want a question?
I was just going to say thank you for your openness and vulnerability and sharing. I think I saw you a couple of years ago, maybe it was just before you lost your dad, at Homer's party, and I remember giving you like a big hug. I haven't seen you since then.
Yeah.
So to hear the journey you've been on and like, this journey of grief and loss and that time since I saw you last, I suppose what you said about hope and resilience in the midst of all of that, was there like a moment that you can remember where you rediscovered that hope again, or what helped you rediscover that in the midst of this journey?
That's a really good question. I think when I talk about slow making, slow art, and slow exhibition, slow making, I think making a choice to, Mum's a brilliant example, like her smile. So, she literally was doing tongue exercises and lots of things to give us a smile. She was literally doing all sorts of shit. She'd be on the way, I'm doing but it's the same for making. There's a conversation between my hands, my head, and my heart. And in that conversation, I observe and I watch and I tune into myself. Connection, disconnection, and learning is about connecting with honesty with yourself as well, and actually allowing yourself to hold a space where it's really painful, to allow yourself to hold a space where there's an inkling of hope, to allow yourself to hold a space where you're afraid and you don't know how to move forward. With loss, it's like, you don't know what's going to be left. But actually to hold space and to be gentle and have self-compassion. And for me, it was in those half hours and in that hiring a space for 2 hours, for which 2 hours of extortion. It was a really good deal because the guy was really sympathetic. but it was 2 hours a month. To hire a space is ridiculous. But it was giving myself those little moments where I recognised what was bringing me joy, and just letting that happen, and as I say, allowing my heart to heal, my head to heal, my hope to ignite. Because the reality is we've had friends who are no longer here because they find it really difficult to be here. And as long as each of us have still got a seed of something in us, so as long as you have that seed, you can water it by being gentle, holding space, giving yourself the time that you need, and having amazing people around you. So thank you to you guys and those that I know. I pretty much know most of you, but you have helped me. Even by clicking on the like on the button. I'm not a real like-driven person, but actually to write, I've had some beautiful messages this week because I'm actually just being like an art hussy and putting my information out onto that, and then I'll go quiet again. But that is really encouraging because I'm hearing stories that it's connecting, and that's what it's about. It's about you and me and us.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story, an amazing exhibition. Congratulations.
I was just thinking of Gail. His two artworks never finished. They're still going on. So you have.
Yes.